Hello, my office workplace warriors, and welcome to another episode of Dear HR Diary by Manage with Heart. Thankfully, taglined the unfiltered truth you wish you learned in management school. And as I've gone about this business, I keep learning more and more and more. And I have the privilege today to have a fantastic conversation with Josiah. Did I say it, Josiah? I want to make sure I
Yeah,
don't butcher your name.
Josiah Pledl.
That's the fun part of not only working in human resources, but I'm sure there are people out there that are teachers that are also like have to butcher people's names. So, Josiah is the founder of 45 Degrees Leadership Development Consulting. He brings 2 decades. He started when he was young, 2 decades of visionary leadership success with executive expertise and a focus on actionable lessons. Josiah seamlessly connects head to heart, no pun intended, right? Enhancing leadership in today's complex landscape. In this challenging era, he equips your audience with the ultimate solution, the power of human connection. Welcome, Josiah. We're glad to have you on the podcast today. No pun intended by managing with your heart. So, welcome.
I think that's actually why I ended up on this show, wasn't it? I think that you
Yeah,
just kind of bought on to the head to heart stuff, and here we are.
that's totally it. That's totally it. It's fun to have a last name like mine and to be able to play off of that. Anybody that knows me knows my maiden name. My maiden name is Large, like a shirt size, Large. So I joke about having a large heart. Ha ha ha. No pun intended there. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, you can't
So
make this stuff up, can you? It couldn't work any better than that.
you couldn't. Oh my gosh. So if you don't follow Josiah on LinkedIn, I totally encourage you. We'll put his stuff in our show notes, but go out and follow him on LinkedIn. He wrote this post today that I thought was fabulous, and I really related to. And we joked about being in our management era. And God love Taylor Swift. So Josiah is going to tell you that he's secretly becoming a Swiftie. And we'll talk a little bit about that here in our podcast because there's some great points that he made when he had the privilege of watching Taylor Swift's Eras tour on repeat this weekend instead of his normal sports life. But I'm going to turn it over to Josiah. Just give us kind of a little background who you are and what this is about and why you really have found where your heart and your head align. Let's talk through that.
Yeah, so my career journey has been dynamic. Let's put it that way. I graduated college. I was in business development, sales. It was at that point I started coaching high school football as a volunteer and wanted to transition. I was either going to go to law school or I was going to become a teacher. And I chose to become a teacher, and I went into education, continued coaching football, and eventually had a mentor that said, you can give so much more to the field of education. You need to get in a leadership role and stop just coaching offensive line. And so I started to pursue that, got into administration, leadership positions, was a principal. And with everything that was going on in society coming through COVID, after COVID, all of those issues and kind of messiness that we see on social media and maybe even at family gatherings for the holidays,
Yeah.
um, we're coming into schools, and it kind of burnt me out. I was kind of exhausted. I was looking to change gears, and my next step was to become a superintendent. And my wife said to me, I really don't want our family to ever go through what a family of a superintendent goes through. And
Mm.
that kind of hit me hard because I'm very, very ambitious. I'm driven by goals. I like to be chasing things and trying to get better. And if that wasn't an option, then what was I going to do? And so I transitioned in the corporate world where I launched a first ever leadership development training program at a company with about 700 employees located in 41 states. And from the ground up, hired 2 incredibly talented trainers, created a curriculum based on a needs assessment. They had about 100 people leaders, and we started training. And it was there that I really got to see the power of when you balance results and people, things, incredible things start to happen. And this company
Mhm.
was, it was recognized as Newsweek magazine as one of the 100 most loved places to work. The overall employee engagement score was 87% favorable.
Wow.
And the manager effectiveness score overall was 90% favorable.
That
And
is amazing results. Like here, I sit here as an engagement, like employee engagement and management person, and I'm just like, like if you could see me, I know this is like we also do this video, but we put this on a podcast. If you can see my mouth is hanging open, I'm like, holy moly, that is crazy and unheard of. So
yeah, and so it was there where I started to kind of develop my own frameworks and paid attention from frontline leaders all the way up to the top, and kind of how do you balance that drive of results along with taking care of your people. And I was also blessed by the company to pour into me with some incredible leadership training, development opportunities. And I started creating my own stuff. And it's rooted in what you said before, is connecting the head to the
mhm,
heart. And
mhm,
emotional intelligence is real. It is the future of leadership. The world is so complex. People are so different after what we've been through since 2020.
mhm,
And everything is at a point where the time is leadership needs to come from the heart. And
exactly.
and this isn't soft kumbaya, love everybody. There's results that matter, right? Like you have to, the P&L statement's the P&L statement, and that's got to look good. But I'm here to tell you that you can have the P&L look great and take care of your people. And you do that by connecting the head to your heart and your leadership, executing emotional intelligence in everyday communications, and you can drive results while protecting the dignity of everybody involved. And that's what 45 is about, and that's why I'm here. And that's kind of the mission. It's been a wild ride, but I'm really happy to be here.
I love that. I love that. And I know when we talked, that was one of the things that we really talked, you and I talked about when we did our original discovery call. I'm obviously very passionate about it from the standpoint of I've been an employee, I've been a manager, I've been in HR, and I've done all three, right? And I have a really unique insight, and anybody that's worked in HR as long as I have probably could say this. It's companies do this just terrible job of promoting an employee to a manager, and they don't give them the tools or any types of training or any type of development. And then we wonder why we have such crappy managers, and or they learn how to be a manager from their manager, and maybe their manager isn't that great of a manager. I have a management client, interestingly enough, that I got a call from the other day, and that employee's manager had just been terminated. And so this employee reported up to a director level, and this director had just been terminated. Well, unfortunately, the director had been terminated from some inappropriate conversations and really bad behavior. And this manager called me, one that I coach on a regular basis, calls me and it's just like, I don't know what to do. And I said, well, the first thing you want to do is you want to make sure that you didn't learn bad behavior from that manager. So let's talk about some behaviors that you feel just gut were not correct. Like, how did this manager talk to you? How, what made you uncomfortable? And as we went through this debriefing, and this manager in the end, she was like, well, I don't want to be that type of manager. I said, okay, that's great. And that's why you hired me is to help you not be that type of manager. And she said, I didn't realize how toxic it truly was until my director was terminated. And now I see this behavior that I don't want my employees to live in the fear that I lived in having this director as my manager. And again, she was making that connection. Very high performing team, extremely high performing team. But there was some trouble in paradise. And when this director was terminated for this type of behavior, it became very apparent that it was a fear factor, and that she looked kind of globally across. She has a 22 direct reports, and she looked globally across it, and she could see where the turnover was happening and where there was this reputation that was, speaking of your Taylor Swift thing, this reputation that she was being drawn into or drug into because people just assumed because the director was that way that the manager was that way. So again, I think being for her to be able to sit in that and self-identify and be like, I don't want to go down that path, made a tremendous impact on her. When it was like, well, how do you want to lead? She's like, I want to lead with my heart, but I don't want to be a pushover. And you said it exactly when you're like, the P&L is a P&L and it has to be met. You have to make goals and it's not a kumbaya. So how do you balance being perceived as a pushover, if you will, to like someone that really earns that respect, earns that trust, earns that, but can be vulnerable, I guess is kind of what I'm getting at.
Yeah, well, that's the $1 million question, right? And what's
Mm-hmm.
funny about that is when I do a workshop or I do a training, and it's common in leadership development, you do the activity, talk about the worst boss you ever had, and then talk about the
Mm-hmm.
best boss you ever had, and you give everybody one of those giant post-it notes, and they write down the good and the bad, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the bad side is like 90% of the page. And the good side is like this little 10%, you know, listen to me, cared about me, paid attention, invested in me. And then on the bad side, you got micromanage, aggressive, dismissive, blah, 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 distracted, not present, disconnected. And people get really, really passionate about the bad. And
Mm-hmm.
what I've seen is in my own growth, really, and then in talking with leaders all over the world, we really grow from exactly what you said, the bad experiences. And to have that, the baseline of emotional intelligence, it all starts with you, and that's
Mm-hmm.
self-awareness. And so for that manager to have the self-awareness to say, look, this wasn't good. I'm looking at myself and seeing where I may have aligned with that and what I need to adjust with that. And so that's the first piece of it. And you talked about being transparent and vulnerable and authentic. And when you talk emotional intelligence, you talk, there's self-awareness, there's self-regulation, then there's social awareness. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's who you are, how you show up as others is social, and how you're going to manage yourself with the social is the self-regulation piece. And so when you put those together, you start to lead in a way that's real and authentic. And you have to understand that your job is to provide clarity, alignment, and then layer in support. And
Absolutely.
and where things go awry, I was just talking with somebody earlier today about this, is there, if there's not clarity and alignment, it's really, really expensive, because you're wondering what you want them to do. They're leaving meetings confused and spending more time thinking about what you want them to do than doing what you want them to do. And there's all this uncertainty. There's wasted time. Your people are your most, expensive asset you have. So
Mm-hmm.
connect with them, show them who you are, be open, transparent, authentic, give them clarity and alignment on what they need to do, check in, offer support, pull back when you need to, provide it more support when they need it, and let the people go. And Jeff Bezos said it best. He said, you want to be really, really firm on your vision, but you want to be flexible on your execution. And that
Mm-hmm.
means allowing people control to execute and deliver on the vision that you've given them with a tremendous amount of clarity and alignment. And what I call that is freedom within fences. So you put up the fence and you let them run wild within that fence and do what you hired them to do. And when you put all of this together, you start to get this sense of empowered people. And when you empower people, they provide you with powerful results. And so it gets complex in how you do all that through the interaction, the communication. That's the foundation of every single leader. And so understanding how you execute emotional intelligence in every human interaction is what I do trainings on and coaching on, as far as how to execute emotional intelligence in every human interaction to leverage the emotions of yourself and others to drive incredible engagement and incredible results.
Oh my gosh. This is like I'm like I'm taking notes. This is just such great stuff. And I think sometimes people think, oh my gosh, you throw emotional intelligence, a lot easier for me said for me to say than to, a lot easier for me to do than say, I guess. You throw emotional intelligence around and sometimes people's eyes glaze over or they're like, I'm not smart enough to understand what that means. And I'm like, it's just how you present yourself. It's being able to identify with what's going on with the person that you're connecting with. You don't have to overcomplicate this to the point that you need a PhD in emotional intelligence. In fact, I think if you had a PhD, that probably would make it that much worse, because you're like, well, according to the textbook of what emotional intelligence is, you're way off course. I took a course in college on not quite emotional intelligence, but very similar. It was the psychology. Oh my gosh, I had to do with psychology, and it built in it touched on emotional intelligence, but not to the point that anyone got anything out of it. But I was like, can we dive deeper on that? I want to go more into that. And I never wanted to major in psychology, but I almost think I do that working in human resources.
Well,
I'm like a psychologist now. It's really funny. In your post on your Taylor Swift post, which I again, y'all should go back and read it. It's obvious. Um, you know, you listened to Taylor Swift multiple times. I'm assuming your children kind of dragged you down that path. Talk to me about the connection that you made when it comes to not only emotional intelligence, but kind of management leadership, particularly around, Taylor Swift, and what you were able to draw to that. Okay, get this. This is the guy, y'all. This is a dude listening to Taylor Swift. My husband listened to the Eras concert for about 15 minutes. And he was like, I'm out of here. I love the fact that Josiah not only listened to it, but he gained tremendous insight from it. And I think it's a great way to talk about what we're talking about on a level that is a lot of fun.
yeah. So Dawn, this is, I mean, my relationship with Taylor Swift is kind of complex, and it actually goes back for quite a ways. So I was coaching high school football in 2008. I was the offensive and defensive line coach. We made it to the state championship game in Wisconsin. We lost. We were the number 2 team in the entire state in our division in high school football, and
Mm-hmm.
we had some really really good football players. And I'm talking big, strong, tough, hard nosed kids. And some of these guys now they're adults. This was '08, so this is you know, however many years ago, over 15 years ago, that these guys were in high school. And one went to West Point, one's a huge like financial guy with an MBA from Booth. Like these guys all went on to become very, very successful adults. But when I coached them in high school, they were obsessed with Taylor Swift. And and it was to the point where we're at a visiting high school getting dressed, and we went through their cafeteria, and there was this massive banner that had Taylor Swift on it, and it said, drink milk, like, milk will make you healthy, America's Dairy Association, whatever. And our star linebacker asked me, would it be cool if we took that banner? Because I really want that in my bedroom. And I was like, stop. Like, we got a football game to worry about, not a Taylor Swift banner in your room. And then my brother-in-law, Jason, is around a similar age. So he would have graduated high school probably in the early 2000s. And he actually, when I started dating my wife back in around 2008, 2009, you remember when people used to still burn CDs?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So he was in high school and obsessed with Taylor Swift. So he burned me a CD of 20 songs that I had to listen to in my car because he felt like I needed to give Taylor a chance. And I did a little bit, but it never really sunk in. And part of the thing was back then I viewed her as like a kid, like
Mm-hmm.
like a high school student that I'd be working with. And now she's turned into a woman. I mean, she's 34 years old, and I've watched her evolve and I've watched her grow, and I've always been aware of it. And of course, there's the songs you hear on the radio. But it wasn't till this weekend where my daughter's 3 and my son is 5. And we watch Disney Plus all the time. They both love sports, and so I was all excited. I was a manager for a Division I college basketball team that went to the Sweet 16 as a Cinderella story in
Oh,
2005 at UW Milwaukee, the Go Panthers. And it's always been a big deal. The first 4 days of March Madness are some of the best sporting days of the year. And so I was looking forward to watching the games. And my kids saw on Disney Plus the Eras tour and Taylor Swift, and they wanted to watch it. So I put it on, and they became just enamored with the concert. And it's the music, it's the special effects, it's the dancing, it's the energy, and all of this together is an experience. It's
Mhm.
not just a concert. And so Kendall, my little girl, she's the cutest thing ever. We call her Kenny. But she's, oh, look at Taylor's shoes. I want her shoes are sparkly. I want those shoes. Do you think grandma could get me those for Christmas? Oh, I want that dress. Wait, why did she change her dress? Now she has a yellow dress. And so she's watching it that way. And my son Caleb is just jamming out. And it just was on over and over and over again for the entire weekend. And with life, and then when the TV was on, they were watching this. I watched no more than 5 minutes of actual March Madness. I followed the scores and knew what was going on, but it was
Mhm.
Eras Tour all weekend, which then led me to put the Apple playlist on. And I started listening to the lyrics, which are, some are just catchy pop, and I'll be honest, are trash lyrics, but
Yeah.
some are really, really deep and really, really captivating. And as I've been looking at this, I started to think about leadership and marketing and all of these things. And what Taylor Swift has done is she's created a worldwide phenomenon by building a personal brand that's rooted in the best practices of executing emotional intelligence.
Mhm.
And she's done that through the when they tell you about marketing, right, or you want to sell something or whatever it is, you go all the way back to the history of mankind. We've always learned through stories. Well, Taylor tells incredible stories, but then she gets really personal in her
Mhm.
stories, and she talks about the ups and the downs. So she's showing up authentic and transparent. She connects with her fans on social media. She has done listening sessions to get feedback from her ideal dream customers, and then changes her behaviors based on the feedback that she gets. She's always vulnerable. She's always open. And that's created this community that's become adaptable, inclusive, and incredibly creative. And she gets people engaged and to keep coming back by sharing her values, being
Mhm.
value driven, empowering her fans and her followers to have some ownership in the insanity and the phenomenon that's worldwide that she's built. And it's never ending charisma, but not in an in your face textbook example of charisma. It's way more like chilled out, kind of just laid back, but also like you want to see what she's going to do or say next.
Yeah.
And when you look at these people in concert and in the movie that are crying, and you listen to interactions of people and see social media posts, every single person in the world that identifies as a Swiftie feels seen, heard, and valued.
Mhm.
And
It's I love the point that it's the seen, heard, and value part. And so I'm sure being a closet Swiftie, if you will, some stuff that she's done for, communities such as the LGBTQ plus community, how she has made them see, felt, and heard, the things that she's done to support women and how she's made women feel support and heard. Kelly Clarkson encouraged her to go back and remake all of her tracks when they were, stolen, use my air quotes here because I don't know the whole story, but it was taken by a former manager, and then she went in and remade them. And someone, I don't if I heard this today or read this today, but somebody said that on one of her albums, it was when she was 19, she wrote these lyrics that were like, I used to do my best work on the mattress. And it was, it was very tongue in cheek when she was that age, or the rumors were in the song. It's like the rumors said I used to do my best work on the mattress, but now it's like, I attract loser. I mean, like attract moth like matches. And I mean, it was very, she even changed the words to be more empowering and less like, 19-year-old Taylor Swift when she wrote them originally. And I think that it speaks to the fact that here it is 2008 and you were listening to her and you saw her one way, and through time she has grown, she has changed, she has become more involved and more conscientious of her own behavior. And I think as we, as managers, it's important to remember our employees or, parents or whomever, that is a journey. But one thing that is going to help get you through that journey and make those connections is exactly what you said, to be seen, to help people feel like they're being seen, to help people feel like they're being heard, and to help people understand their value. I think that in itself not only speaks to what Taylor Swift has done in this huge phenomenon that she's created in not only her own era, but as a manager era or my own era. How am I doing that? And I think those are questions that we can self-reflect on and ask all the time. How am I helping my employees feel seen, heard, and valued? And that's what drew me to your post, particularly today, is like how you drew all that into it. And those that maybe don't or are new to management or don't understand how to even get started in this whole world of business or be an employee or just to be a decent human being. I think you hit it the nail on the head when you brought that up. So, giant round of kudos for you because you helped identify something that people probably think is just, very um, silly or goofy or whatever, and you helped relate it to something where somebody could understand it.
No, I appreciate that. And this ties into my work with 45 Degrees Leadership Consulting is I was in a meeting with a highly, highly successful CEO. He founded the company, built it up. It's now over 200 employees. I want to say they did like 150 million in revenue last year, was 7 or 8 of it was profit. Um, and they are just super successful and their culture is unbelievable. Like he went a whole quarter at a company with 200 employees with zero turnover.
Holy
And
moly.
yes, and so this is what's funny is for my company, for my work that I do, there's not a lot of in between. I get companies that are like absolutely crushing it in culture, and then I get companies that are not. And the
Mm.
ones that are crushing are like, we want to keep doing this. We know we need to do more. Our culture is our culture. We got to protect it. We got to add to it. Like, let's come, let's go, let's talk. And then the other side is I haven't slept in 5 days. The people problems are killing me. We're coming to the end of the first quarter. We're nowhere near where we're supposed to be. How are we going to finish the year if we can't even start the year? And it's those like dynamics, right? But so this CEO that has it rolling, has it going, and he told me, I want to do business with you, but right now where I'm at, it's my house isn't on fire. I got these other more pressing issues that I need to focus on, but I want to connect in the future because I want to do more. And he said, but this is what I need to understand. How do you coach somebody on emotional intelligence?
Mm.
And I will be straight up. I did not have the best answer when I talked to him, but I've thought about it my whole ride home, which was an hour drive. And since then, and it comes down to those three things that you just said of feeling seen, heard, valued, understood. Like, what does that mean? And so if you want to coach and develop emotional intelligence, you have to move it to behavior. And so, when somebody says, I don't feel seen, that's very different than, every time I come to talk to you, you're checking your phone, you're looking on your computer, you're saying, hold on, because I got to respond to an email. Like all of those things come out as I don't feel seen. But if
Mm-hmm.
you're coaching a manager and say, hey, so and so doesn't feel seen, the manager's gonna be like, I don't know what that means. Like, are you kidding me? I got to worry about this, this, and this, and you want me to try and figure out what I need to do to make this person feel seen. And so
Mm-hmm.
when you break it down and say, hey, how are things going with so and so? I appreciate that. I want to share some feedback that I got with you in an effort to help you grow and strengthen the relationship so that you guys can take this to the next level and start crushing it. But what I've seen is that they're not feeling seen, and this is why. You respond to emails during your one-on-ones. You check your phone when you're in a conversation with them. You immediately walk away when somebody more important or higher up than them positionally comes walking to the cubicle.
Mm,
Those three behaviors make that person feel small. It makes them feel like they're not being seen. So, how can we work to address those behaviors to improve the feelings of your team member?
absolutely. Oh my gosh. And those are powerful and little things where you might think as a manager, you might not think that that's a big deal, but to that employee, that's massive. That is so huge. And I know when I do some management coaching, I'm like, how would you describe your management skills? How do you think? How would you have somebody tell you what type of manager you are? And that's kind of an interesting question. Some of my manager clients are like, I would hope that they say I'm X, Y, and Z. And then
Yeah.
that's when I go down the coaching path when I'm like, okay, well, this is what they really are saying about you. And I would say probably about 50-50, they already know. Or it's kind of very insightful of them as well when it's like that kind of stuff. I also think that you're building this incredible connection when you really listen to what the feedback that your employees are providing to you. But it's creating that ability for employees to feel comfortable to have those conversations with you or about you, or sometimes in my situation with the director manager that I was just talking about earlier, that manager never felt comfortable going to her director and having these types of conversations. She's like, I know that my director will just get mad at me, or my director, probably very similar to what you're just saying, my director doesn't always see me as somebody that she can rely on, and it's very frustrating. And so just listening to her talk, it almost was a weight lifted off her shoulders when this director was no longer there. And I said, okay, well, here's a fantastic opportunity for you to like either go in and have a conversation with now your new manager and set the stage and build on that and say, listen, this is how I'm going to show up at work for you. Here's what I need from you. Here is how I like to be managed. Here is how I like to be rewarded and recognized. Um, if there's corrective feedback that needs to be provided, here's the best way to give that to me. Here's how I receive it. And I don't think we always take the time, even as an employee, to have those types of conversations.
Yeah. And the interesting thing, have you ever read the book, Thanks for the Feedback?
Uh-uh.
Oh, this book will change your life.
Oh,
Um,
thanks for the feedback. We'll put that in the show notes. Thanks for the feedback.
yeah. So it's two professors at Harvard, and they wrote a book saying that, we spend so much time training people on how to give feedback. And there's tons of professional development, learning opportunities. You got to get better at coaching. You got to get better at giving feedback. And they say, well, what if we change people to get training instead of giving it on how to receive it?
Mm,
And it talks about all these triggers and different things that, like in your brain, just pop up, whether consciously or subconsciously, that prevent you from taking feedback and acting on it. And
yeah.
and the book is incredible. There's, I mean, that if you read just pieces of it, there's just incredible insight into all of the different things that happen psychologically, all the different things that pop up, and then also how to overcome those. But one of my mentors told me all the time, and he was very direct. He was very demanding as a leader. But he said, anytime you're given criticism, your number one responsibility is to assess the validity of the criticism.
Mm,
And don't get defensive. Like, it's natural. You may think there's no validity to it, and your natural reaction is going to be to get defensive. But when you receive feedback, especially when it's critical, you need to really step back and just assess the validity of it. And you have to make a decision on every piece of feedback. And one is it credible? Is it valid? Do I need to reflect on this? And sometimes that's yes, sometimes it's no. And so if it's no, you know that you're not going to change your behaviors or your actions, but you still have work to do in understanding why that other person feels the way that they do.
mhm.
But if it is, yeah, this is really valid. Like, I'm not doing a good job in this. then you have to be open to changing your behaviors and changing your actions, because if you just continue to do the same, wrong to your team, you're never going to get ahead. You're never going to achieve what it is that you want to achieve. And so, yeah, you got to look at all feedback. And people say it's, feedback's a gift. And I get frustrated because, like, usually when you get a gift, you want it, right?
Like, can I return that? Is there like a return date on that?
Well,
Oh
not
my
not
gosh.
what's in it, not what's necessarily in the paper, but you're in a position where you want gifts, right? Like I go to my
Yeah.
birthday party wanting to get gifts. I go to Christmas celebration wanting to get gifts. Like I'm there because I have a desire to give and get gifts. Well, sometimes when you get feedback, you may not want the gift, right? And so that's not a gift then, right? Like so
Yeah.
how is feedback a gift? And feedback is only valuable if it drives you to change your actions based on the validity and credibility of the feedback.
Oh my gosh. Well, that is a great stopping point. I'm gonna touch base with Josiah. We're gonna continue this on a part two because I think we've got some great discussion, conversation going. So I just want to wrap up today's episode of Dear HR Diary by Manage with Heart. Definitely the unfiltered truth you wish they taught you in management school. Stay tuned for a part two with Josiah because this has been just a very fun conversation and informative conversation, and dare I say, emotionally intelligent type of conversation. So until then, my fabulous, wonderful office workplace listeners, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Dear HR Diary by Manage with Heart.